Welcome back to another episode of Let's Play 1001 Games. I'm your host, Gaming Jay, and today we are checking out the Sierra Online classic known as Carcassonne. Now, Carcassonne was a board game developed in 2000. It was a 2 to 5 player board game about, I guess, taking territory or taking land in sort of a medieval France or medieval Germany. We got the nice title screen here showing us what I only assume is perhaps a French or at least a European princess. On the left there, on the right, we have sort of a swarthy little European prince. We've got the sort of Pope dude there and the very bizarre looking clown fellow here. Now today I'm doing things a little bit differently than how I normally do them, and so rather than actually record my commentary while I was playing this game, I ended up recording it after playing this game. So like you guys are doing today, I'm just sort of sitting back and watching this video and kind of going to give you my thoughts as I play through this. And I'll explain why I did that in just a moment here. I think the game is going to get started any second here. And so I go ahead here, I select basic game, I believe. I definitely did play through the tutorial a little to make sure I was familiar with this game. Kind of a funny story, I played this game years and years ago, I think at a party. But I definitely did not remember when I loaded up. Like, I remembered vaguely it was about sort of capturing territories and so on. Now, I think here I end up going with 4 or 5 players. I think I went with 4 because I didn't want a board that was too littered with opponents. Sometimes in these games, if you have too many opponents, things can get quite difficult. I played my first game on medium, and I do okay, I think. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see as we go. Anyway, I decided to record my commentary after playing this game because I'm actually playing the trial version of Carcassonne. I've done this before in the past. I typically so this is a digital download game. This is a game you can only get on Xbox Live Arcade. You can only play it on your Xbox, and it's a digital only download. There's no way to actually purchase it. And to be totally honest with you guys, I have a little bit of trouble buying games that are digital only because I kind of feel like I can never get rid of the game or never sort of sell it used when I'm tired of it. Oh, sorry, here I'm explaining the rules. Let me actually explain that just a moment here. I did actually record audio with this, by the way. It's just that, long story short, I ended up abandoning it. But anyway, in this game, it's about placing tiles on the board. As we see there, if I lock off this sort of brown area as I do and place a little follower inside, I will end up taking that territory and earning a couple of points. And so the goal of this game is to kind of take territories, which will turn into towns and castles, to also take roads, to take monasteries, to try to possess the things that end up being constructed on this map. So as you can see, a road there is starting to expand with the yellow player down there. And the road will keep getting bigger and bigger, and as it gets bigger and bigger, that yellow player will get more and more points because he's the only one controlling it. Now, if I place a tile right there where I have it right now, I would not be able to assert control over that road. I would just be helping the yellow player. But if I place it right at the top there where I had it, like right there, I could take control of that road myself. And then if the yellow player's road and my road connect up, because we both already have little people there, we would both get points. So I think I end up placing it up here, but I think I place a little meeple, a little follower inside the actual brown area, which is sort of the landscape that will eventually turn into cities. And cities are more valuable than roads in this game. So there's a lot of strategy in terms of like how you're going to position your pieces, in terms of trying to set them up in ways that like other players will help you expand but not take control of things away from you. So it's an interesting game. It's an interesting sort of tile-based game here. But going back to the digital downloads for just a moment, so I'm actually playing this game on an Xbox that one of my friends was kind enough to lend to me. And I have issues, as I say, buying games digitally only. I kind of feel like if I'm going to pay for a game that's digital only, I almost prefer to get it on PC because it feels a bit more portable. You know, when you buy things like the Xbox 360, it's not long for this world. I mean, it's a system that's basically, it's been replaced by the Xbox One already, and pretty soon it kind of won't be supported anymore. So to buy a digital game that is locked on the Xbox 360, that at some point in the near future won't be supported anymore, and I'll just like lose the money and lose the game, I'll never be able to resell it and recoup any kind of money, it just feels like a bit of ripoff, I think. And so, you know, they wanted $10 for this game, and that's actually not a bad price at all. But, you know, if you're interested in this game, by the way, you can play it on an Xbox One. I totally recommend checking that out instead. But it is kind of unfathomable, or it is kind of unbelievable to me these days that a game like this is a neat, interesting little board game. I don't understand why this was never put on Steam. You know, like, it just seems like these days, if you're gonna go to the trouble of making a digital version of your game, why on earth would you limit yourself to one platform? You know, I understand, like, for Halo or for Uncharted, those are, like, franchises that are more or less owned by, like, Microsoft or Sony, respectively. But for something like Carcassonne, like this random little board game, why would the designer of this game limit himself to only allowing it to exist on the Xbox? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Anyway, the game's been going on here in the background for a bit as I rant and rave about digital-only download games, which I'm not a huge fan of, especially when they lock you to a particular system. But anyways, we've seen... So the land is slowly taking shape here. I'm debating now between taking control of a road or a monastery. So monasteries let you end off roads, and when roads get sort of capped off with a monastery or a crossroads, then they complete, and whoever has their meeples on the roads will get points for it. And you can actually share points, by the way. So if a road gets completed and both me and a yellow player have meeples on those roads, we'll both get points for them. Or if the road gets completed and I have more meeples than the yellow guy, but we're both on the road, then I actually take all the points. So you can kind of compete a little bit in terms of how many points you're going to get and who's going to get the points. Now the trick is you only have 9 meeples, so if you spread them out too thin, trying to sort of stake a claim on too many different points, you might reach a point where you have no meeples left. Meeples are these little red guys who are dancing around the board right now. But you could easily reach a point where you have no meeples left, and then you know what happens is you can't actually stake claims to new territories, and it can actually end up screwing you. Because until you complete an area where you've got meeples, you can't get those meeples back. So they just sit on the board until, as we just saw there, a road got completed, and all the meeples that were kind of guarding those roads were then returned to the players. So there's some interesting strategy going on here. Now, it's interesting. I always find it interesting to play board games on the computer or on a console. I'm actually a big fan of board games. I grew up with them. I like the sort of turn-based tactical strategy you find in a lot of board games. One thing I've actually noticed over the years, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this too, but I feel like board games are getting significantly more sophisticated and advanced. Like when I was a kid, and I've already ranted and raved about Monopoly once before, but when I was a kid, back when I made my Civilization video, I think I had like a long diatribe about how much I disliked Monopoly and didn't think it was a good game. And I stand by that. If you're interested in my thoughts, you can go back and check. It's like my 7th video or something. I was so wet behind the ears. I mean, I still am in many respects, but it might be a rough video to watch these days. But at some point I go on a long diatribe about how I think Monopoly is not actually a good game, and I don't know why everyone likes it. It's a game that everyone had at one point. It's weird. It's like everyone just owned Monopoly for some reason. I think because it was one of the first sort of widespread board games that sort of, you know, took hold in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, whenever it sort of took off. But Monopoly's not a fun game. Nobody I know has ever said, boy, that was a fun game of Monopoly. It always ends in like frustration and someone throwing dice and like people being like, I'm never playing this game with you again, or maybe that's just me, or it kind of ends in like, you know, people are just groaning and ready for the game to be over. Like, it's never a fun end. So yeah, like in terms of comparing modern board games to games like Monopoly like that, modern board games are getting significantly more fun and sophisticated. I mean, look at this game. I haven't really been sort of narrating the game very much. Okay, hold on. Let's pop in for just a second. So I'm doing pretty good here. I've got about 12 points, got a good number of meeples across the board. I'm trying to position myself around so that I'm sort of taking control of as many territories as I can get my greedy little paws on. It's hard to kind of come up with a coherent strategy here because I haven't really played this game all that much, But my strategy, my goal was really just to kind of make sure that whenever there was like a big road or a big castle that was slowly emerging, that I sort of had my foot in the door. I had some meeples there and I was going to get points. Now, one thing I didn't know is that when the round actually ends, all these uncompleted structures will suddenly count as completed and you'll get points as if you had completed them. So had I known that, I might have played this slightly differently, but I think I come out reasonably okay in this sort of first match here. Now I am playing on medium difficulty, so I did not necessarily expect to win. And like here, like, you know, it's probably like going around thinking, I don't know where the hell to put this piece. Like maybe I'll put it here or here or here. I don't know. You know, like look at me. I'm so indecisive here. I'm like, I don't know. I guess, is this good? Is this a good spot? Is this where it should go? I'm really having a think here. I'm like really agonizing over this one piece. My God, just place it, Jay. Place it. It doesn't really matter. The game's about to end anyway. But board games have gotten significantly more advanced. So this is like an example of a more modern board game. And I think this, even though I wouldn't say this is my favorite board game, it is definitely way more fun than Monopoly. And, you know, you can go into, I mean, one thing that's definitely changed the face of board games is the internet. Like everything, you know, like movies and video games. You can actually go look up reviews for board games before you buy them. So back in the day, you had no idea what good board games were, and you just kind of like wandered into Sears or, you know, I was about to say Home Depot. Who buys a board game at Home Depot? But what, I don't know, Kmart or wherever? And you would just pick up a board game and be like, okay, I've heard of Monopoly, I guess I'll play that. But in modern times, you can totally look up reviews and find out what is actually a good game. And I think that's given rise to better and better games because people actually have to make good games if they want to sell them, right? To some extent. I think games have gotten a lot better at creating fair circumstances and creating games that have natural endpoints. So a game like Risk is an example of a classic... Okay, here, sorry, tangent time. Here's where playing the trial version bit me in the butt and why I decided to narrate this like this. Is that this trial version, it lets you play like 75 or 80% of the game, then all of a sudden it takes control and you just have to sit back and watch the game. So I kind of figured when this happened, I was like, oh man, so the running commentary I had up until this point, I was just like, well, I don't know what to do with this now. So I stopped recording my voice. And then I just realized, well, if I'm just going to sit back and have to watch like a quarter of the game here, why even bother recording like live commentary? It's not like in this game, there's going to be like insane scares and like lots of reactions and you want to get my like commentary while I'm playing the game to like hear my reactions to these insane occurrences. It's like, no, it's freaking Carcassonne. It's me spending a lot of time going, as I think about where to place a tile, and then getting back to my commentary for about 20 seconds while I wait for my turn again. So in fact, actually, this probably isn't the best game to be commenting over. You know, I would like to know, though, I've only ever done this once before, but what do you guys think of this sort of post-game commentary? I don't think I would do this for every game, but do you guys... Would you like maybe some videos where I'm playing the type of game that's a little more cerebral, that we can just sort of let happen in the background, and just have me sort of chat with you, you know, while I'm not playing the game? Is this more interesting, or is this more disconnected because I'm not actually in the game? Like, what do you guys think? You know, I'm always interested in trying these new things and just seeing what works, because this is a big learning process for me in terms of how to make these videos and stuff, even though I've made like over 100 at this point. Anyway, scores are being tallied up. I was happy that I didn't come in last in this game, although, as you can see, at first I was like, oh, I have 39, and he has 46. Oh, and he only has 36. Maybe I'll come in second here. It was not meant to be. I think the blue player ends up either beating all of us, or he definitely beats me, because I know I came in third in this game, so there you go. But one thing that modern board games do... yeah, the blue player came in second, I'm third. Okay, well, that was my first game, but I can do better. Now, in the second game here, I believe that I go in and I decide to try it on an easier setting just to experience winning one time. I think I end up going through 3 games here in total. So this is game number 2. I'm deciding, I'm like, yes, let's go with 3 players this time on easy, and let's see what I can do. Now, as I was saying, one thing that modern board games have done very well is they figured out that people don't necessarily want to play like 6-hour games. So like Risk is an example of a very strategic game back in the day. that may have been kind of like Carcassonne here. I mean, it's not quite the same. Risk is about conquering armies and stuff. This is, I mean, you're vying for control of territories, but not in the same way of directly conquering your opponents. But what this has is a definitive endpoint. These games last like 10 to 15 minutes at the most. I've mentioned this board game before. It's one of my personal favorites, although like I don't think anyone really plays this game, but the Game of Thrones board game, it's kind of like a modern Risk with politics thrown in, but that also has like a natural endpoint too. It only goes for 10 turns. Now, it does end up being like a 6-hour game because those turns last a hell of a long time, but the 10-turn thing mechanic is interesting, and I've always kind of liked that they put it in there because it does give the game a natural endpoint. The thing with Risk is, I say Risk is like a 2 to a 6-hour affair. Risk could be like a 36-hour affair. It has no definitive endpoint. Risk could, in theory, go on for days. In fact, I think there's an old Seinfeld episode where that indeed happens. And it's because, like, depending on the players and what's happening on the board, you could potentially kind of go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and last almost indefinitely in Risk. So, I do like how modern board games are kind of taking design lessons from older board games and figuring out what worked and what didn't, and they're improving them. And it reminds me a lot of what's happening in the video game industry. I mean, if you look at a modern video game today compared to one that came out way back in the 80s, there's lots of differences in terms of design philosophies, in terms of making games accessible and so on. And I would argue that modern games tend to do a much better job of sort of having their quote-unquote tutorials exist within the gameplay. Well, not all games do this, but you know, there's lots of sort of little things that modern games do that make the games easier, more playable. You know, back in the day when I was growing up, if you played a game like Mario, it would literally be like you turn on the cartridge, you have no idea what you're doing, what the buttons are, how you're supposed to win the game or anything, you just play. And that was normal. But nowadays, no developer would throw you in with that little idea of what there is to do. Even though Mario is like a pretty accessible game, I think everyone would agree it's pretty easy to pick up here. So my strategy here, if you see on the left, I've got a little town that I've taken control of. I have 2 meeples guarding this town, and my goal is to just build this as big as I possibly can. Now, running down the center of the map, I'm taking control of a road, and I'm going to try and build that road as big as I possibly can, and that's about all I've thought. That's about as far as I've thought for this particular game. I'm just trying to think, how can I make these 2 things happen as best I can? So you'll see me sort of puzzling over where to place a few of these tiles, and really what I'm thinking about when I'm kind of going back and forth here is how can I maximize the area of these 2 places. And I think I even end up slowly trying to expand directly north, where I have those sort of 3 meeples in the middle of the board. I try to expand directly north and make another big castle-y area over there, because once I realized at the end of the last game that you didn't actually have to seal in an area to get the points for it, I thought, well, I'm just going to try and make the biggest possible areas I can, so at the end of the game, I explode out of nowhere with an insanely high score. So that's kind of my thinking behind the game right now. So what do you guys think about the idea of taking board games and digitizing them? Board games, as I said, I'm a board game fan. I like playing board games, especially a lot of modern board games. I've really rediscovered them over the past couple of years, like how much fun some modern board games really can be. I think I was kind of off board games for a while, just because I kind of started, you know, I just didn't keep up with what modern board games were doing, and I guess I kind of thought in the back of my head that they were all kind of just like Risk and Monopoly and stuff. But, you know, as much as I liked Risk, it is a daunting game to play. But I have a couple friends who were like really into board games, and they got me into it again, and I really discovered how much variety and how many interesting different types of games exist out there like this. I mean, this is an interesting kind of game. I could see getting into this and wanting to play it a little bit, especially if you had a iPhone, or God forbid a Windows phone. I don't know who has a Windows phone these days, but you could play this game there. It's a real shame that I believe this is not out for Android, and a bigger shame, once again, that this is not sort of more widely released. I mean, this should totally be on Steam. I don't understand why it isn't. Once again, you know, exclusivity deals, they're really, really annoying. They're really like artificial walls that get put up unfortunately, that really hinder gamers' ability to play all the games that exist out there. So, yeah. But if you have an Xbox One, you can pick this one up. But what are your guys' thoughts on digitized board games? Obviously, I think I'm pretty much in favor of it. You know, one thing as a kid, I loved playing board games, but there wasn't always someone around that wanted to play them with you. With digital board games, not only can you play against the computer, which I personally really like, because sometimes I sit down and I want to play a game and like, it sounds stupid, but I know I want to do well at it, so I would much rather play against a computer AI that's on like a medium setting where like I know that I'm probably going to be able to beat it. And sometimes I'll play against a hard AI or an actual human opponent, but sometimes you just want to like relax and know that you're going to win a game. Sounds kind of stupid, but it is true, and so it is nice having that option. The AI will always play with you. As a kid, if you wanted to play like Monopoly, God forbid, or Risk, or one, you know, there were tons of other games as a kid. But if you wanted to play one of those, you know, a friend around, there really wasn't anything you could do. I mean, you could try playing Risk against yourself, but let me tell you from experience, that is a pretty boring way to go about it. It's really just a way of practicing your dice rolls at that point. But being able to play with friends online is also fun. You know, not only do you have the AI opponents and random humans, but you also can go and like just play with your friends. That's another thing that I think is really awesome about the internet. Is you know, as much as I really do like playing games physically with friends, like, you know, locally, I do like the ability to play games online with friends, because I don't necessarily live right next to all my friends, and sometimes, you know, you want to play a game with someone and they're not around, but you could online, and that's the beauty of online games. So I think, you know, I mean, to me, if you have a semi-successful board game these days, I don't understand why you aren't digitizing it just by default. It seems so cheap and easy these days to find programmers, and the programming languages are so easy, and like the development cost of everything is gotten so reasonable that it just seems like a no-brainer. That if you have produced a board game that is even moderately successful, freaking digitize that shit, man. It's 2016. Like there still are some board games out there that I quite enjoy, that there's just no digital version of it. Okay. The computer's now taking over. Unless I want to pay to unlock the full game, I don't get to finish out my game. I think this is kind of a really annoyingly cheap way to make people buy the whole game. I can't tell if it would have actually made me purchase the game, or if it just would have incensed me so much that it would have been like, screw you guys, you're never getting a penny out of me, how dare you do this to me. Because, like, here's the thing, if you're gonna have a free trial of a game, there's one thing I absolutely hate, and it's limited time or limited capacity gameplay. If you're going to give me a trial of a game, give me one game mode and let me play it. You know, kind of the old shareware model from the Doom days. When you got a trial of Doom, which is basically the shareware version of Doom, you could play the entire episode 1. You could play the whole sort of set of levels all the way up to the first set of bosses and beat it and finish it. So you got 1/3 of the game. Now, the other 2/3 of the game were amazing, and you definitely wanted to unlock those. But in this, I don't understand why you're allowed to play like 75% of a round, and then it's just like freaking over, right? So like, okay, here, let's see. It's kind of interesting because like you get so far in this game, and you have your strategy, then all of a sudden the computer takes over, and you're like, I hope it follows my strategy because I think I was doing okay. So the points are counting up. Jay's at 71. Oh, this guy's counting up to 50. What's he getting up to? 57. Oh, we're onto the blue player. Okay, if I can stay ahead of the blue player, and he's got a long way to go to catch up to me. I think I have this in the bag, guys. I think he's up to 44. And that's it. Boom. So it turns out I can win this game on easy against 2 opponents. Okay, I go in one more time for one last round, and I decide to play it on mega intense uber expert mode, just to see if I could dance with the devil. We will see. So this is a much more intense one-on-one of Carcassonne. This is like where you go into like, you know, a Chinese betting parlor and you're like gambling on games. This is like that game of Carcassonne. It's like so intense. You can like see the decision making going on, the careful placement of each tile. Yellow is ahead. by 4. But Jay is coming back. He's connecting up the roads. Whoa, he's locking them into competition for the center road. But where will it go from here? Oh, yellow is taking control of the northern route. Jay's going to lock it up on the south. But little does Jay see, if he does this, if yellow is able to connect the northeastern segment, he will have 2 meeples there. And Jay realizes this, and Jay will get no points. So Jay has to somehow defuse the situation. He's going to go for a delay tactic here. Figuring out where to delay it. He's not too sure. He really actually has never played this game before. So he's kind of flying by the seat of his pants here. He's going to go with that. No help to yellow. No help to Jay. Where's it going to go? Is this is not that thrilling, I know. I mean, this is one of those games you just can't really make thrilling. Here's where, okay, I lock it up. I give him points on the north, but I also make a split the points on sort of the south. Not even split, but both get it. Because if I'd done it any other way, he would have gotten all the points. So I figured it was sort of splitting the difference. Now this game, you can watch it. I end up being behind for most of the game here. It's actually, I feel like a game of good run for its money. Again, I wasn't expecting to win, but I thought maybe I could do okay. I was trying to like outmaneuver him for that sort of big center piece of land, but I think it never gets completed. And what basically ends up happening is at some point here, I end up using up all my meeples, and I get really screwed because I have no ability to claim any new territories, and he just starts completing territories left, right, and center and getting all the points, and I can't do anything about it because I can't stake a claim to any new territories. So you can watch me dance with the devil here for a bit. But yeah, board games. In fact, actually, I don't know how much more there is to say about board games. Maybe we should just sort of comment on this last game here and think about things. I mean, I guess one last thing I could ask you guys is, what's your favorite intense board game? So, there's like casual board games like Snakes and Ladders or like, I don't know, checkers. In fact, actually, it's weird to think of checkers as a board game. I mean, it totally is, but I guess I think of like Risk and Monopoly and like Snakes and Ladders and Carcassonne here and various other things, but like checkers seems like checkers. Doesn't seem like a board game for some reason. Anyway, what's your favorite like intense board game? So intense would be like Risk or like Carcassonne or Settlers of Catan. I feel like Catan is a lot of people's go-to intense board game. Settlers of Catan kind of strikes me as the game that kind of brought in a renaissance of casual players back to the board game community, because it showed people who maybe had fallen out of interest with board games like myself that, hey, actually board games are going going strong, and there's lots of new interesting sort of gameplay elements and complexity to board games that rivals some strategy computer games. So yeah, I mean, Settlers has done its thing to like bring the game, bring board games back to a wider audience. But yeah. Now I definitely know, even though we're tied in points at this point, I definitely know that I'm losing, because this is the point where I now have no meeples. So if I had a meeple, when I placed that tile there, I could have gotten 4 points because a town just got completed, but I have no meeples, so I can't do anything about it. He just got 4 points. And now I know I'm screwed. What I need to do is like rush to complete something, anything, so I can get a meeple back, because he just got 4 more points. And now I'm really far behind, and I realize it. And now I get this crappy piece. There's nothing I can do with it. I think I end up throwing it down. Yeah, I just connect it there, because I'm like, well, might as well get some points for it. He's completing more things. He's got 2 more points. He starts to leave me in the dust pretty badly at this point. And you ever have it where you're playing a game and you know you've lost? There's like, well, it's funny. Sometimes you play a game and you know you've lost, and sometimes you play a game and like you're pretty sure you lost, but in the back of your head you're like, maybe I could make a comeback. I was kind of thinking that. I was like, well, maybe it's not done. And then it was like, okay, if you want to keep playing this game, you got to unlock it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's now in the computer's hands. It's out of my hands. And I was like, maybe the computer will save me. So I was actually kind of grateful at this point. But yeah, so the whole fact that they cut you off from gameplay really bothers me in this game. I really do feel like if you're gonna if you're going to create a trial version of the game, just give me one game mode that is complete. I would have been completely fine if I could only play this on easy against 3 opponents, and there was nothing else I can do. I couldn't change it to 2 to 5. I couldn't change it to medium. I couldn't do anything. At least then I would have one complete game mode, and I could try this game in its entirety. With this, I feel like it snakes away the end game from me. And the end game is arguably where you like make your move. And so it kind of annoyed me. And if I were interested in potentially buying this game, I don't know if that would have turned me off, and out of spite, I wouldn't have purchased the game. Because I have not purchased games before out of spite, guys. So, I mean, hey, we've all been there. It's kind of annoying when developers try to, like, it's like such a blatant cash grab, you know, in front of your face. So, yeah, I don't know. But maybe I wouldn't have done it out of spite. Hard to say, but I'm not a fan of this type of trial mode. I mean, I guess, you know, there's only so much sympathy, I suppose, I'm going to gather from you guys about complaining about not paying for a game but being able to play it anyway. But those are my thoughts, nonetheless. It is interesting to watch the worlds kind of take shape, by the way, as you play this game. It's like a whole little, like, virtual world is, like, emerging with castles and roads and stuff. I kind of wish there was, like, a mode 2 where you could now, like, play a little RPG or, like, Civilization-style game in a world that you had just built. That would be kind of cool, because it looks so cool. I don't know, I've always been fascinated by these little digital worlds that emerge. Okay, we're coming down to the wire here, just a couple of tile pieces left. I'm trailing by 6. At this point, I'm thinking the computer has done a lot to pull me up, and maybe it has recovered me, more or less, and I should be okay here. And I'm trying to read the board right now, seeing how are we going to score in this, like, final countdown here. I think I'm doing okay. So I'm getting 62. Then boom, there's a couple of cities that get counted, which seem pretty good. Get up into the 70s, 78. Boom, 85. And I'm thinking 85 to 58, is that enough? Then his numbers start counting, start going up and up. Start to see him hit the 70s. This is where I get nervous. And I'm like, okay, if he stops counting now, okay, maybe it'll be a tie. And then I realize it's not going to be a tie. I realize I totally lost. He totally kicked my butt. But for somebody who's never played Carcassonne before, I think to even go toe-to-toe with an expert computer, I don't think that's all bad. So Carcassonne, what have we learned here today, guys? I think we have learned that when it comes to board games, there's absolutely no reason to not digitize them these days. And that, you know, board games can offer some pretty fun strategic gameplay. I'm a huge sort of fan of this type of stuff, you know, and like the pros of this game are this, it's very sort of fun strategic action. You can play against AI opponents or other humans and stuff. I believe you can even also get some expansion packs for this game. So if you find this game too simple and you want a little bit more, you can totally get that. Now the cons are that, you know, I mean, one of the sort of meta cons is a digital download. I've already talked about that. But another one of the cons is that it's, you know, it is sort of more of like a mini game style game. And one downside to playing a digital board game is that sometimes people develop house rules for their board games and they really come to like them. There's no possibility of having house rules for Carcassonne here, obviously, because it's a digital board game, but that kind of goes part and parcel of the territory. So in terms of like true absolute cons, I don't think there are too many. I mean, for the trial version, the hugest con is the freaking computer takes over. But that's not in the final game, so I won't weight that against it. Carcassonne, I thought was an interesting game to play. It struck me as a well-done board game, and I think it's a game that is worth playing before you die, believe it or not. I just do wish there was a Steam version out there, but, you know, we don't always get what we want, folks. Anyway, if you guys have enjoyed this video, give it a like, give it a subscribe. I will be back in a couple days with a new video and a new game. You don't want to miss out on that. And also, let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this whole post-game commentary thing. Do you prefer it to me commenting in-game? Does it take away some of the spontaneity of like my vocals or something like that, or some of my reactions? I mean, this game, there weren't too many opportunities for reactions, which is why I felt comfortable doing this. But, you know, I'd be interested to know how you guys sort of view this compared to some of my other videos. Anyway, until next time, my friends, take care of yourselves, and peace.